Only a handful of them have become names we remember in its genre, and with only a pinch that lie outside of real-time strategy. Many games may be considered medieval in nature, but most hold fantasy elements of magic and dragons. So for the sake of truly medieval... Kicking off at number 5. Authentic and as medieval as they come, the non-fictional War of the Roses. As many fours as possible. Then it was nerfed, heavily reducing its damage, so I moved on and fell in love with a great English two-handed sword, matched with heavy plate armor. There was a time I'd jump into warriors and butcher them all. Well, game, War of the Roses centers around the battle between the Lancastrians and the Yorkists, and all with very descriptive real-life details for all its weaponry. The combat system features a counter mechanic in which you actually had to move the mouse at whatever direction and right-click to block the enemy blow. It took a lot of getting used to, with reflexes that had to be spot on, and one-on-one battles could take a serious amount of time depending on the level of player skill and how much damage your player dishes out. And the phenomenal customization options are by no means purely cosmetic. Certain armors offer more protection, whilst the trade-off severely limits speed. Everything from the chink of plate and crease of chainmail to the vulnerable gaps of helmet visors are taken into account. We don't get to see these kind of games all that often, so for third-person melee combat, swear fealty to War of the Roses. It doesn't get much better than this. Why do I suck so badly at I knocked off my own teammate? God, my face! At number 4. For your honor! Encompassing both city and resource building with intense real-time strategy combat. Stronghold.
Try some of this.
With both military and economic campaigns, Stronghold was surprisingly complex for a game released in 2001. There was astounding levels of deep... Defenses were expansive. Multiple scenarios could even be played where you'd be expected to take on massive fortresses and deploy all kinds of units from siege towers to underground tunnelers.
Into the blackness!
Once the enemy lord was killed, victory was the most highly rated of the series. At number 3. For honor and glory. Take up your sword and jump into chivalry's fray of unmerciful, ruthless savagery. Oh, fucking hell. As the unhealthy first-person alternative to War of the Rome in disemboweling those sissy archers that stand at the back of the battlefield. But whatever soldier and unlock class you choose, the harsh reality of dismemberment is always funny. The game is very fast-paced, which may appear to lack any form of etiquette, but chivalry demands well-timed reactions for its meaty attacks. And when the two groups collide, anything can happen in its frantic mess of mosh pit madness. The objective modes show a sadistic touch of humor and deviate far from just a simple team deathmatch. The game is set in a fictional... you son of a whore! And should you ever grow tired of its medieval constraints, the latest DLC offers 5 new classes in a stupidly awesome bloodbath of pirates, ninjas, Spartans, Vikings, and samurais in a number of fresh environments. But for the battle of your wallets, Chivalry and Roses are very different games, and War of the Roses is now essentially free. Into the fray. Come on. Good day to you, sir. At number 2. In a time when pissing off the Pope had consequences. Medieval 2 Total War. The recipe between turn-based and real-time strategy is a recipe only Total War has perfected. Occasionally, spanning from the Middle East to the entirety of Europe and Africa, every aspect of ruling a medieval kingdom is covered. Diplomatic and religious decisions are just as important as militaristic ones. The papal election can make or break an empire through supporting the faith in constructing religious buildings and completing religious missions. Once one of your priests reaches cardinal, this was mass warfare. Auto-resolving certain battles is not always a viable option. Naturally, you wouldn't rush cavalry into the teeth of spears and pikes. But when managing thousands of men at multiple points in a siege, it can all get a few life questions and your epic adventure begins. Characteristics and skill levels will coincide with what you've told the game. But from there on in, the road ahead is whatever you make it. At first, you would begin by fulfilling quests for the various citizens and nobles in whatever location you chose. Most missions involve simple message deliveries and slaying groups of bandits. Of course, you're completely free to rob and steal for yourself as well. And as opposed to medieval Total War's mass RTS gameplay, Warband is the individual's perspective in a battle. By recruiting mercenaries or training an entire army of peasants into loyal knights, you can issue your men strategic commands to make for realistic and extremely satisfying medieval warfare. Formations, morale, and the types of weaponry used all factor into how a battle plays out. Even from miles away, one entirely random stray arrow can zip through the sky and hit your character in the skull, thus pulling you out of the action completely. In terms of castles, land, foliage, or interiors, the game is fuck ugly, there's no two ways about it. Now the multiplayer has potential, but given that the engine is so easily modded, it's also fairly prone to hacking. All too often you'll run into a fight and suffer a massive heart attack, consequently dying on the spot, thanks to the enemy player's inability to play fair. But in placing aside Warband's obvious faults and unexplained learning curves, you may find yourself enriched with, and at the same time, annoyingly addicted by Warband's medievalism. The single player will pay you back in hundreds of hours gameplay.